Hey everybody, welcome back. It's just about a week and a half, just over a week, and we will be getting starting off in Quebec the 5th of August for the big ride. So there's been lots on the go. You guys haven't seen me for a bit because sharing Mia's story, which was it was incredible to finally get to interview her. That's something I wanted to do something I wanted to do last year, and it just didn't happen. Kind of the other big thing that happened last Saturday was the Bomb the Bruce ride out of Owen Sound and up the Bruce Peninsula. Honestly, it started as half a joke, and suddenly, a month beforehand, we decided, hey, let's see if we can't throw together a ride. And wow, what a ride it was! 73 people showed up to ride last Saturday. Showed up at Fox Harley Davidson to ride, and we had people came all the way from Windsor and Michigan just for that ride, and that's insane. So that was huge. So huge thank you to Bombshell Stella's, huge thank you to Fox Harley Davidson, 92.3 The Dock, King Service Center. We're using their property, or Bombshell Stella's is using their property, so that's where we ended up parking. Big shout out to Canadian Veteran Freedom Riders out of Meaford. They came out, they were kind of our co-host in that as well, and they rode sweep for the ride, and everybody seemed to have a great time, enjoyed some awesome food, and a really beautiful day for riding. So could not be happier about that. So the topic, I guess, for today, and this was something that came up when I spoke to Mia, and it's something that came up while off camera as well, probably in more detail. I want to talk about management versus treatment, and talking about obviously operational stress injury and post-traumatic stress disorder. So I've shared before, but I'll just mention it again. I managed PTSD for a very long time. I was diagnosed in 2001, very early on in my career, and that pretty much meant that was pretty much career's over. To have that diagnosis at that time, and that early on in my career. So I began managing it very, very vigorously. I acknowledged it, which was good. I was open enough about it that I always got help when I needed it. But really what I was doing was I was managing. And by managing, I mean, I was, getting into the coping strategies and picking things apart as they happened, and, my reactions to things, and just doing what I could to get through. And what it really comes down to as well, there was definitely good that came out of that. And I do have to say I managed things fairly well for a very long time. But what it came down to was maintaining the illusion of everything being okay. That's essentially what management comes down to. I'm putting out fires as they pop up, and I'm maintaining the appearance that I'm okay. So, and of course, in that context, maintaining that appearance is so I can continue to be a soldier, so I can continue to deploy and be employed. And I did that for 17 years, and so that was the image I maintained, and by you essentially sell yourself on your own bullshit. And the lie I was telling everybody else, I'm fine, everything's okay, I was telling myself at the same time. I had to believe it to live it. And so there was a certain amount of denial and self-deception going on. And I've likened PTSD before to a dam, and I don't know if I did that on camera. I think I did it in a bit of writing. And basically you got this wall that you put up, and by and by more and more stuff starts to build up, just like a dam. The water builds up behind the dam, stuff starts to build up behind the wall, and the pressure just keeps going up and up, and you got to build that wall higher and thicker, and that's a lot of effort. But if we liken PTSD to a dam, and eventually things wear out, right? Management we can liken to, there's cracks forming in the dam and things are starting to pop through here and there, and essentially you sticking your fingers in the holes, plugging the holes as things start to come through. And a couple of things happen. number one, eventually you run out of fingers and toes, and you start to get overwhelmed. Your coping mechanisms start to get overwhelmed. And that's certainly, I rode that cycle. It's very much a cycle. Things are okay for a while. I'm managing good. Then all of a sudden I'm not. And then you have to do a bit of a reset and get hooked in. That's management. And that's fine. Long term, it doesn't fix anything though. For a while you can keep going, and I managed to do it for 17 years, but nothing ever got fixed. Nothing ever got addressed. And one of the big things about management, when you're standing next to the dam and you got 10 fingers and 10 toes plugging holes, your perspective is here. That dam is literally like right in front of your face. You have no long vision. You have no width of vision. You've got no peripheral. You're just looking at this dam and you're just reacting to every little thing that comes up. So you don't have the big picture. And I definitely recognized that when I released. I went and did the ride. I realized I needed to do something active for transition. But I also realized that all the help that I got while I was still serving, I'd go in and see a social worker, I'd go in and see a psychologist or whoever, and I was managing. And I would go in and say, yeah, this happened or that happened, but this is what I did. And again, just maintaining that illusion or that image of being okay. And I always sounded level-headed enough that nobody ever truly got very alarmed. So, there's a bit of deceit in that, obviously, but that's management. You go in, you talk to your care provider, and you talk about what happened this week and how it affected you and what you did, but you don't talk about, for me anyway, I really managed to avoid talking about emotions. I managed to talk about, past events from very far, because it was always focused on that last week. It was always focused on the management. It was always focused on the holes in the dam that week. And nothing ever got addressed. And I'm not blaming any of my care providers, because I had amazing care providers. They were great people. They cared. This was just the image I was portraying. This was the role I was playing. And I think, so I have to own that. That's on nobody but me. So when I started to go to the operational stress injury clinic in London last September, after the ride ended, I'd started back to school, started seeing a psychologist, and the idea is treatment. And, I didn't want to continue managing it. I didn't, because if I do that, I'll manage it for the rest of my life. It'll never be dealt with. Nothing will ever be dealt with. I'll just keep managing. And again, I talk about the long view, or the big picture. You don't see it. You don't see it when you're bottling everything up. You don't see it when you're stamping out the fires and managing just to look okay. So one of the things I've had to learn to do, and I'm still very much just learning. This is new. But I learned to start doing it on the ride last year, and some of it was through sharing these videos, and some of it was through reflection. The shift comes when you're standing in front of that dam and you see a crack starting to form, or you see a leak, and instead of plugging your finger in it, you stand back and you let it run. And you just let it run. You experience it. You don't try and stop it. And then another crack opens up, something else gets poked open, and you let it run, and you stand back and you experience it and you let it happen. And what starts to happen is you start to get that big picture. You're standing back, you're detaching, you're seeing these things happen. And as that water, we'll call it, what's pouring out from behind the dam starts to pool in front of you, you start to see where everything's connected. When you're just dealing with this issue that pops up and you plug that hole, you're looking at that issue as its own little thing. And you can't see where it connects to so many other things. You don't see where it comes from. But when you let it run out and you stand back and you let it pool in front of you, you can see where everything is connected. And I started to learn that. So when I went into see a psychologist starting last September, I said, I'm going to focus on the day-to-day. This is my habit. I'll focus on what happened this week. I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what I did. I'm going to sound very rational, and it's total bullshit. So, and I don't think I necessarily needed to tell them that as much as maybe I needed to tell myself. But I said, I set up that accountability structure. I said, you need to call me on when I'm just focusing on what happened over the last week, because I don't want to do that. I don't want to continue to do that. And part of it is the fact that I don't need to maintain that image anymore. I cannot be okay. I can dig things up and I can experience them and I can react to them, and I don't have to hide that anymore. So I didn't want to. So yeah, that's what I told him. I said, we're not focusing on this day-to-day bullshit. The minutia. We're not worried about that. I want to go back and I want to dig things up. And I'm going to tell you one thing that has been instrumental in doing that is my coach. My coach has been a huge part of that whole process. And so back in 2015, I'd become an image tech, and I noticed I didn't have that peer leadership. I didn't have that strong leadership culture up and down the chain. There was a lot missing. There was accountability, and there was being challenged and pushed, and just having that lead to follow that was missing. And I reached out to somebody who I knew did coaching on the side, and it's a fellow by the name of Steve Scott. So I reached out to Steve and said, tell me what this coaching thing's about. And we got to talking, and as it was, I said, yeah, if you'll take me on as a client, I'd love to have you as a coach. So that's what we did. And that made a huge difference in managing things. And it made a huge difference in me moving forward. It made a huge difference in me being able to go do that ride last year. Those weekly, monthly, long-term goals, short-term goals, those things that we work with. When I said, hey, I want to do this, was 6 weeks out. That didn't happen in a vacuum. I had him to bounce ideas off of. I had him keeping me accountable. I had him asking me the questions that made me think about what I was doing. So I work with a coach, and I kind of got the idea that, okay, I have this habit of dealing with the week to week when I go into like counseling or therapy sessions, and that doesn't work, obviously. I don't need to hide that anymore. So the plan that the three of us came up with, my psychologist at the clinic, my coach Steve, and myself, was that I deal with all that week to week, day to day stuff with Steve. I deal with that with my coach. All the management stuff, and goals and all those self-care, all those things, I worry about that with Steve. That's Steve's corner of the room. And basically what that does then is that frees me up, that when I walk in to my appointments, I don't have to sit there and say, I had this trouble this week, I lost my shit at the grocery store, I got really nervous in traffic. I mean, a little bit of it, sure, but I don't have to sit there and waste an entire, my sessions are an hour and a half every week. I don't have to sit there and waste an entire hour and a half talking about what happened this week. We can talk about it briefly and see what it connects to maybe, and then we can go explore that deeper. And it has been amazing. I mean, it's, I can see the progress. I can see the dots connecting, and I don't want you to think that it's a matter of, taking your fingers out of the holes in the dam and standing back, and after 20 minutes that pool's going to be there and you're going to go, oh, look, all of it's here. No. The process sucks. It sucks hard. And just when you think, oh, that's all there is, another hole opens up. You basically you open up something else, and that pool keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I'm sure I'm going to continue to experience that for it's probably going to be a long while. But I definitely see the progress, and I guess the big takeaways is if you're doing the management thing, and maybe you're still serving, and maybe you need to, but be wary of that. Just focusing on that day to day when you start to go to talk to somebody for support, because it's going to get you from here to there for a while, but by and by nothing's going to change. Nothing's ever going to get better, and so be wary of that. And if you're out there and you're connected with a provider and you don't feel like you're making any progress on anything, maybe ask yourself, am I just focusing on the day-to-day? Am I just working on management skills? Or am I actually getting to the root of the problem? Am I letting everything run out from behind the dam? Or am I still trying to bottle it up? And I still catch myself bottling shit up, without doubt. And you still have to pick your battles too. But, you know, that has made a huge, huge difference, just that shift in thinking. And if you've got somebody, you know, I mean, the coach, you know, I pay Steve out of my own pocket, so it is a personal expense. And I realize that that might not be realistic for everybody out there. But if it's within your means to do, or you're curious about it, I really encourage you to reach out. And if you've got somebody detached, you're looking at that day-to-day management, and you can talk those things through, and then you've got somebody to look for treatment or therapy, you know, having the two separate has made such a huge difference. And it allows me to get so much more done, I think, in terms of actual exploring and healing within that clinical sphere. But yeah, that's my 2 cents for this week. So that's the clinical sphere. On to the adventure sphere. You can see Kelso behind me. I've been spent all day today going through my pack and load, just to see, you know, what kit am I bringing, how am I going to organize that on the bike, and taking the lessons learned from last year, because there were definitely lots. And yeah, so that's what I spent the day doing, basically dressing Kelso and getting ready to go. And that is exciting. I cannot wait. So there's 3 of us registered for the full ride. Myself, Paul, and another guy named Frank. And you know, the 3 of us, I can't wait. I can't wait to get on the road with these 3. And it's definitely not a full ride. We had 20 spots, so there are still spots left if you want to come. But you know, having a smaller group is not necessarily bad either. But you can still come out and join us for the day or a couple of days. I've posted everything as events on the Facebook page. If you're in Newfoundland and you just want to come out and ride the West Coast, we leave Port aux Basques, we spend the night in Pasadena, and the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 68 is putting us up for the night. They're putting on dinner. The bar is open. We can rack out in the Legion itself, and then carry on the next day to St. Barb. So if you're in Newfoundland and you don't feel like hopping on a ferry, you can come ride those 2 days with us, and we would love to have you. If you're not riding, you can come out, come to the Legion, have some dinner, have a drink, and just say hello. And the same goes to anybody along the way. If you've got a story to share, you're a veteran, a first responder, regardless of trade, regardless of, you know, anything, we want to talk to you, and we would love to interview you. And just like we just interviewed Mia. And you know, please get in touch. All the contact info is in the video description. Yeah, all the routes are posted. Like, we are getting down to it, and I'm ecstatic. I really can't wait. So just to recap, we leave the 5th of August from Quebec City. From there, we make our way around the Gaspé Peninsula, down the east coast of New Brunswick, bump over to Charlottetown for a night, and then out through Cheticamp, the Cabot Trail, the west coast of Newfoundland, across the Trans-Labrador Highway, and then back to Quebec by way of Baie-Comeau. And yeah, I can't wait to get started. I can't wait to get on the road. Had an awesome weekend with everybody at Bomb the Bruce last week. And yeah, just ready for more. Ready to hook up with the Rolling Barrage in Charlottetown on the 5th. And if you're anywhere in Canada and you're wanting to get involved with a ride, the Rolling Barrage, 5th of August, they leave Halifax and they're rolling right across the country. And they have all kinds of places where you can join in with them. So check them out. That's it, guys. Have a great week, and I will see you next Thursday. Cheers.